I've been sharing my experience for the first time going to therapy with you over time, and today is my 2-year check-in. To start off, these last 2 years have not been easy. Dedicating time to delve into the deep and the dark parts and the messy parts of myself has taken a lot of courage. And overall, I'm so happy that I decided to go down this path. Before I ever started therapy, I was a bit afraid that it could make things worse because I was suppressing a lot of emotions. I was pushing down things that were not right, were not acceptable, were not okay, and rationalizing some reason that it was okay. You know, everybody did their best. No, I hate that term because they did not do their best at times. There were people around me that intentionally hurt me, and it had severe consequences on my life going through well after it occurred. But sometimes I don't do the best, right? Sometimes I can't find 100% to give. Sometimes I make mistakes. So it is a part of being human. But before, where I was like, yeah, it's not a big deal. Yeah, it was a big deal, and it did affect me, and it did impact me. And there are a lot of times where I never received an apology. And how do you deal with that? You know, how do you move on from things where there's no responsibility taken? So I can't change other people, but I can change me. And as a result of these things happening to me, and being in an environment where it was very difficult for me to get away from that situation, I found that I developed behaviors that allowed bad behavior. So when something would occur, I might express myself and say, hey, that's not right. But ultimately, I didn't take the steps to leave, which put me in situations where I was just constantly feeling like I was being either taken advantage of or hurt, and I felt like I couldn't do anything about it. So I had this idea, like if I didn't pay attention to these things, if I brushed them off, if I made a joke of them, that, I'd be able to just move on with my life. But that really wasn't the case. Over time, I found myself just continuously being put into these situations of where I was unhappy and I wasn't standing up for myself. Because of that, I developed some unhealthy coping mechanisms to kind of numb out the uncomfortability for me. You get so used to your environment that sometimes you think it's normal. You might see glimpses of other people's, but when you start sharing this with a therapist and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe you had to deal with that. That's so difficult. And you feel this sense of validation because everybody else around you was also used to that bubble, was also used to that dysfunction. Diving into some of my traumatic past was difficult, especially at first. But over time and gently, my therapist took me through where I was able to just get more and more out. And she would ask me questions like that just kind of really pointed out that it wasn't my fault that these things had happened to me. In some cases, you might go through something and where no one else is taking any blame, the only person that you look to accept some of that responsibility might be yourself. Someone's mistreatment against you is not your fault. I had developed something called an anxious attachment style, which was a result from other people knowing that I would accept mistreatment. So someone would treat me badly, and then I would say, well, what did I do wrong? This must be something. Let me go back to them. Let me chase them. Let me try to fix it. Let me be self-defeating to myself and turn my light down and turn myself down so that they felt more comfortable. So over time, I was able to heal that and move towards a secure attachment style where I no longer chased. The funny part about it is that some people never came to see how I was doing. Some people never checked in on me, and some people expected me to continue to chase. There's a very dark shift that happens because you have this community, and when you come from dysfunction and where people have mistreated you, it's very common that for me, I had surrounded myself with other individuals that had like behaviors. So once I was able to identify these behaviors and stand up for myself and say, I'm no longer tolerating this in my life. This is not okay. This is not where I want to be. This is not the energy that I want to be around. I'm not going to expose myself to it. I have to protect myself. Although you may come to terms and say, I understand this person went through it themselves and I forgive them and I want to move on. Like, revenge was never a thought in my head. I always wanted the best for the people around me. I always loved them and still love them. But in some cases, I had to choose to remove them from my life. And that was a very lonely and dark period of my life. And, it still hurts sometimes. So I learned how to set boundaries. And those boundaries brought me a lot of anxiety at first. I remember the first time that I actually spoke up to someone and said, I really don't care for this and this is why, in a very pragmatic way. And they immediately bit my head off because they weren't used to me saying anything. They were used to doing what it was that they had found to be comfortable for them. I sat in that, and actually the feeling afterwards, even though it was uncomfortable, was such joy and lightness. I was so proud of myself. And with anything of a practice behavior, with anything that you become good at, you have to practice. So you recognize either this person is going to accept the boundary that I've created, or they're not going to accept the boundary that I've created. And before, I would have the point where, okay, they're not accepting the boundary that I've created, or there's been a period of time. In abuse, it's called the flower period, when the abuser gets the abused wife flowers and says, oh, please forgive me, I'm never going to do it again. And then maybe it's 6 months, maybe it's a year. And then here it comes, something so horrific all over again. So, these periods would happen, and then it was up to me to say, well, how am I going to respond to this? I do not have to continue this relationship. Also, because over a period of time I had these experiences, I had a lowered sense of self-esteem. So I had all these beliefs about myself, like things were my fault, or, everything kind of pointed back to me. And I had this idea that I had to be perfect and be the best at whatever it was that I was doing. So that was a lot of shifting and changing and looking at these behaviors that I develop. For example, I might isolate. I may remove myself from people because I believe at some point it was safer for me to do that. But then when I'm doing that in new relationships where I don't have all the information, I'm kind of applying this pattern or this behavior in a way that isn't conducive to bringing new and healthy relationships into my life. So that was something that I had to learn how to focus on and begin to change. And it feels uncomfortable at first. Everybody's experience is going to be different, but the self-awareness is what I was looking for, is what I needed. Because I was, when you're in the middle of something, you become very much blind to it. And you have a mental health care professional kind of opening up and saying, hey, these things do happen to people, but they're not commonplace or normal, and this might be a better way to deal with it. I also learned to develop healthier coping mechanisms. So before, I might go to food, or I might drink a lot on a weekend. I was able to also stabilize those areas in my life and do things like heavy breathing or meditation or exercise, which were healthier coping mechanisms that allow me to calm down. So actually, I no longer drink. I'm completely sober. And I've taken a lot of steps towards my health and well-being. I've lost a lot of weight through this process. So that's just my experience, not saying that happens for everyone. But for me, as I cleaned up my mental health, other things followed suit. So I have this analogy, and think about a cut, right? You initially get a cut, it's open, it's gushing, right? That's the initial things that happen to you. Over time, it starts to scab up. It's really ugly. You're healing, you're doing the work. It's not always easy. Sometimes you're getting triggered. Sometimes you make mistakes. Sometimes you fall into bad behaviors. But gradually, that cut is working on itself and it's healing, and then it becomes a scar. the scar's still there, right? Like, these things still happen. They didn't go away. I still have the memory of them, but the intensity has lessened. There's a lot of healing that takes place, but there's also still a lot of management that I need to do ongoing to ensure that I'm continuing to make good choices for myself and my well-being and my mental health. Continuing to go to therapy over a period of time has changed my life. Like, I'm so thankful that I did the work and that I'm doing the work, because I feel like it's never really done. I think that life is a very long journey, and I don't think anyone gets on their deathbed and is like, yep, nailed it. I handled every situation the way that I should have. I did the best that I could. Sometimes we don't do the best that we could. And I have to accept that about myself. I have to love myself anyway. I have to say, okay, I made this mistake. Maybe I said the wrong thing. Maybe I hurt someone's feelings too. I have to learn how to forgive myself and move on, and know that I can apply this as a lesson in my future relationships so that I can have and maintain healthy relationships. I can say, I'm sorry, I'm so sad for myself that I let this go on for so long that I didn't get up and leave. What's wrong with me, right? What's wrong with me is that I had a lowered sense of confidence, and I had a lower sense of self-worth, where I said, well, yeah, okay, my feelings aren't as important as theirs. When I started to realize my feelings are very important, my feelings are everything, this is my life, I'm the main character of my story. Some of the things that have changed is I know myself so much better than I did. I was really oblivious to a lot, and I'm sure I still am, and that's a path that I'm going to continue to go through for my entire life. But from where I started and where I am now, I have a much better understanding of self and self-awareness. I've identified a lot of behaviors that I developed to keep me safe at a time, and when those should be implemented and when maybe I'm kind of going on autopilot and using them as a trigger, right? We have behaviors that are good, and we all have behaviors that are not so healthy. I identified some underlying beliefs that I had about myself that weren't true. There were exercises that my therapist would say, okay, well, is that fact? I would come out with these thoughts of what I thought that people were thinking, or what I thought that people were saying about me, and I had no evidence of that. I was literally just like making it up, and where that was stemming from was, yeah, maybe some experience from them, but also I took on that belief within inside myself. And I was the one now controlling the narrative, because somewhere deep in me, that was something that I believed about myself now. So I had to undo that. And that's not an easy thing to do. It's still something that I continue to struggle with and have to put practice and work towards. I learned ways to self-soothe and calm myself down, and coping mechanisms, different exercises that I would do and try. It was like a whole bunch of tools in a toolbox. One day I would pull something out and it would work great, and then the next day I would pull it out and it wouldn't work. So I had to try something else and figure out, what is it? I had to know that this was important for me. I need to feel better. I need to make steps towards my health and my well-being and where I want to feel on my level of happiness and contentment and peace. And that requires work. And I have improved confidence and learned to love myself. Now, I'm not perfect by any means. You might think I make these videos and I've got it all figured out. I don't. I make these videos because I experience these things myself, and I want to share with you what I've realized, and maybe in a way, like, I know that me realizing these things has helped me take steps towards changing. And I hope that it can do the same for you. I know I'm not perfect. How can I accept myself when I make a mistake? How can I forgive myself and love myself regardless? I can come on here and I can be cringy sometimes. I can be honest. I can be rough. And I love it all. So I'm still going to therapy. I still find it very beneficial. I really look forward to these sessions. I do a lot of work in between on my self-care, everything that I talk about in this channel, so you can tell that I'm studying and trying new things, and I'm going to continue to share that with you. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I hope that this helped you in some way, and thank you for watching Stop, Look, and Listen with Samantha. I believe in you.